All right, guys, in today's video, we are going to talk about how I essentially accidentally landed multiple high-paying job offers in my early 20s. Now, I get asked this question a lot because now I am a career coach over at CareerSprout where we help people navigate the job search process. And oftentimes, we're helping people land, whether it's their first or, several years into their executive career, we're helping people land $200,000, $300,000 plus salaries. So it is often an elephant in the room in the beginning where it's like, why is this young, socially awkward introvert, talking about how she can help me land a $300,000 job offer? So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of my story as well as some actionable steps that you can take to hopefully progress a little bit quicker throughout your career, if that is a goal for you. So I thought I was an entrepreneur in the beginning. I made my first $1 million in my early 20s by securing $300,000 plus contract roles. Now, I thought those were just clients. I didn't realize that contract work could actually be for non-entrepreneurs as well. And I didn't find out about this until one day I just very casually mentioned to one of my clients, hey, I've been running this campaign for another client of mine and it's been converting really well. I think it would work for you as well. And I thought he was going to fire me on the spot based on his reaction. He essentially said, how the fladoodle do you have time to work with another client? And I got extremely nervous and I just told him, I was like, I actually have 8 other clients. And it turns out I didn't realize this at the time, but I essentially just had 8 full-time jobs. And he was not mad at all. He was very excited for me. He was one of my first mentors and he actually convinced me to leave and start my own high performance coaching company. So I did. That was actually how I met Gaurav. My whole process of that back in the day was just helping executives and small business owners essentially optimize their lives so that they could get more done in less time. And so it's more impact, more profits, more time with the family. That was how I met the founder of CareerSprout. He wanted to be able to help more folks without sacrificing his family time. Now, the interesting thing was as I started going through his curriculum, I realized each of the 5 steps in his job search process, that was actually what I was doing to land these contract roles. So I really just had to laugh out loud and really realize and accept, like, man, I really wasn't an entrepreneur. I was just doing a lot of work. And the cool part about it is Gaurav oftentimes speaks about your career progression life cycle. Now, this is where it becomes very actionable. Oftentimes, people don't realize that there's really only 3 stages of their career. Stage 1 is their learning. That is where typically you're in your 20s, right? And for rough numbers' sake, that's where you're making your $100,000 role. That is where you are learning from. Hopefully you're at a company that you admire, not a huge deal if you're not. Hopefully you have a mentor who is 5 to 30 plus years, ahead of you where you want to be in life, where you are learning the tips, tricks, tactics, problems, obstacles, solutions, failures. You're learning as much as you can from somebody who's already been there, done that. Now, the cool part about this learning stage is as long as your survival number is met, oftentimes that is good enough. So whatever your survival number is for what your cost of living is, typically you can make sacrifices on the pay to go and exponentially increase your earning capacity in stage 2, which is, so stage 1, learning, stage 2 is going to be your earning stage. Now, this is oftentimes mid to 20s to mid 30s, depending on the person, depending on the season of life, if they decide to have kids, different things like that. That is your earning season. And oftentimes we each have our own hiccups or our own ceilings that we place on ourselves. Some people, it takes them a very long time just to even hit that first 100. Oftentimes though, it takes people a decent amount of time to either hit that $200,000 or $300,000 stage. And that is because they struggle to go through that career progression life cycle. They struggle to go from the learning to the earning stage. So in that earning stage, that is where oftentimes you are now starting to lead other folks. That is where you are starting to become more of a leader, where you are able to not only do the actual work as a contributor, but also manage other people and be responsible for other people's outputs as well. Now, that is, I would argue, some people get stuck at, as I mentioned, at each of these stages. This is oftentimes where most people get stuck. This is where you start to look at the executives and you start to think like, oh man, they have something that I don't have, or you start to feel like you're being taken for granted, or you feel like you're underpaid, or you're wondering like, why am I just not, progressing within this company anymore? And that's because you get stuck in that earning versus the third stage of your career, progression lifestyle cycle, which is your steering. This is where you are actually taking ownership of the company's objectives, of accomplishing the company's mission, and you become the one, steering the ship, so to speak. And oftentimes, the skills that are required to be an earner versus a steerer, most of the times the skills are not actually different. Oftentimes, the only difference is somebody taking ownership and knowing how to communicate with leadership that I am now ready to start steering. Oftentimes, actually, there's no skill gap whatsoever. You're doing almost identical work. It's just that you are reporting to a different, body of humans, essentially. And so I was very, very fortunate that I didn't actually know about these life cycles, and I didn't have any preconceived notions of where I should be at in my career, because again, I thought I was an entrepreneur. And so I started, you could argue it was very quickly in terms of years, but when you look at the number of hours, like I was one of those folks who was working 18 to 20 hours a day. I did not give sleep the respect it deserved back then. So I essentially got when you calculate the hours, I have worked as much as probably somebody in their mid 40s. So like hours wise, I wasn't that much quicker than anybody else. It's just that I condensed it down into a very short period of time. And because I was only around entrepreneurs, because I spent I spent most of my time and most of my mentors were entrepreneurs, I just had those expectations very early that I should be owning a department, that I should be owning the company's mission, I should be owning, XYZ, insert whatever it was, and I should be steering other folks to, get there. And so that was something that I am, to this day, so fortunate, so lucky, so grateful that I had happen to me, was that I had just a different set of expectations that made me put in more work early on in my career so that I could get to that $300,000 level sooner. But now the actionable insights of how do you get to that next level? Oftentimes, one of the best hacks that we find is going and speaking with people who are at that level. So if you are somebody you're learning and you're trying to get to the earning stage, reach out to somebody who's about 5 years senior of you, who is, already making that roughly $200,000 range, and ask them, hey, what are the exact steps that you took to land this position? And then you can essentially do that for 10 or so people, and then reverse engineer the next step that you should be taking. Same thing, if you are earning, trying to get to the steering, next steering stage of your career, go and reach out to 10, 15 folks who are making that $300,000, and you can ask them, hey, what are the exact steps that you took to get into this role? And then again, based on you, your experience, your goals, reverse engineer the next best step for you. So, this is essentially what we do. This is what lights me up. We will take folks through this process and help them reverse engineer and know, based on their past experience as well as their future goals, both personal and professional goals, we will help them navigate that process to know what they should expect for this next role and, what the different ceilings are based on, the different industry they're in, the career path they chose, all that good stuff. So if you do need added help with that, once you have a chance to speak with other people, or if you're not sure who to reach out to, feel free to reach out to us. You can comment below, just send us a message and we can help you out with that. But hopefully just learning about that life cycle and seeing what those various stages are and whether or not you are, putting a ceiling on yourself. Hopefully that helps somebody get to that next level. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Talk soon.